Welcome to the show. Hope I don't talk too slow. Gonna have some fun. Put my hair up in a bun. Gonna have a good time. Ride a scooter, it's a lime. That's the shit that I've been bumping. Been bumping that kind of shit lately. No, I found this kid on Instagram. His name's Josh, and he's gone semi-viral, not real viral, because he's going viral because he's bad at singing, which the internet is mean still, but it's like not the unjustified mean of like if somebody's just trying their best and they really suck, but they're not like a bad person, then the internet doesn't totally rally around shitting on them. That being said, that's not totally the case. It's just like this one of this kid's videos has 378,000 views. And it's because it's bad. So like the numbers he's getting just off of being bad are like astronomical. And like his lowest viewed video is still like 30K. Which like internet wise, just views is like not even a lot anymore. But there's this kid and he's just so bad at singing and writing songs, and you feel for him because he's 18 and I'm 23 and I do this podcast and I do stand up. So I know what it's like to be a very young person who's trying to make art about their life, and most people rightly so being like, shut up. And especially, in stand-up it's tough because it's like when you can sing about anything. You can just sing about like a beach, like it can just be vague. But usually in stand-up you have to have a perspective. Not usually, you have to. Even if it's a silly one, even if you're just doing nonsensical one-liners, it's still, you have to have some sort of place you're coming from. So when you're young, I started stand-up when I was 17, people immediately are like, well, I don't want to listen to his perspective. Like rightfully so, so I get it. I understand. I'm with this kid. But he's making this music and it's like just bad, man. Like it's just bad, and he just sings about nothing. He has this one song where he goes, it was the spring of 2020, wishing things costed a penny. And it's like just these lines are like he's very new to songwriting, I think. And he just goes for lowest common denominator. So it's like there's just, but since it's music, he's still trying to have like passion, you know what I mean? And like really, like he cares about, it's his life. He doesn't know anything else. So like this stuff matters to him. So he has a song about being 18 and how 17 was crazy. And he's like, 17 was such a journey, feeling like I'm an attorney. Wish I could go back. It's too hard to pack. Those are the actual lines. And maybe I shouldn't say them, but this kid's already getting more views than my podcast ever will. So he's getting shit on all on his own. But I mean, it's bad, man. Like it's bad. And there's these people you find on Instagram. And I don't like when they're like teenagers because I don't want to I'm 23, but I'm not a teenager. So I don't like looking at a 17-year-old and being like, what a loser. I mean, at least this kid is legal. For some reason, that just makes it like he's legally an adult, so I can kind of shit on him a little more. But, I mean, it's like him, there's this other, like, rapper girl, and she, like, sips, like, Robitussin and, like, over-the-counter cough syrup, and she just has these weird, really, like, eerie almost rap song where she's like, gotta stop sipping Robitussin, makes my brain hurt. And she raps just like that. Like she really, it's this weird thing where some people record music where you can tell that somebody else is home. You know what I mean? Like they're singing, but it's too quiet. Like it's not, they're never belting it out because somebody else, probably a parent, is in the house and they're kind of embarrassed of it. You know what I mean? And so it's like this thing that's so funny, and if you try to replicate it in a sketch, you would go too far. Like if I made a character based off of these kids and tried to make fun of them, it almost couldn't be realistic because it's really hard to replicate the kind of anxiety that is in someone's voice when they're obviously trying to sing so their dad won't hear. But they also want and do release it to the world. They want to show people it. So there's like these recordings of them recording on a setup maybe even similar to mine, and they're just like, going down the street, gonna hang out, gonna do my thing. People always talking, but they never say anything. And it's like this weird whisper. And I think they also almost, their music style is not even necessarily what they would do, but a result of how fucking scared they are to actually sing. So like this kid that's more the singer, he has like chill songs, but I literally think it's just because he's recording in his bedroom and he doesn't want to be like, hey, like he doesn't want to do that. He wants to be like, spring of 2020, because I can sing, I can talk at this tone and I can kind of sing but never really belt it out, and you can't really hear it downstairs, but you can just feel the anxiety in it, and it's like these videos just flood the internet of just people being so bad at what they want to do. And when it's music for some reason and they're like a sheltered suburban kid, because kids that are not sheltered and in the suburbs, they sing as loud as they want. That's why like young rappers in bad neighborhoods are hilarious, because they'll just walk into a 7-Eleven and be like, I'll push your shit back. You know what I mean? Like there's a guy shopping for groceries and they're like, okay, so the art direction for this music video is I'm going to destroy about $58 worth of soup in this supermarket aisle. You know what I mean? And there's like a lady in the back like, what are you doing? Like, that's fun. Because some kids are like, they're not great at music, but you watch their videos and you're like, this is almost a prank video. Like, with how insane this kid is. Like, and that's what, you can make a career out of that. Like, there are, like, I mean, the biggest example would be TK, who's now in prison for, I think, like 40 more years. But he took part in like 3 murders, and I think did the murdering in at least a couple. But while he was on the run from the police, he released a great rap song called The Race. And he made like a fake wanted poster, and he's like, and he's like making fun of it. He's on the run from the cops, which I think that video probably helped them find him. I mean, there's that one autistic guy on Twitter that can look at any street and find out where they are. So maybe they have one of those guys working for the FBI, and they're like, where is this? And he was like, are you kidding me? That's fucking Illinois, And then they found him. But yeah, it's like, that's fun. And there are tons of people who just are bad at music, but they don't give a fuck to the point that they're arguably good at music. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of rappers nowadays that do, like Young Lean was huge when I was in like high school and shit. And if you don't know him, he's a Norwegian rapper. He would wear windbreakers and bucket hats. His group was called the Sad Boys. And the aesthetic was vaporwave, which is hard to explain, but it's like these shitty computer-generated, like all his music videos would be like these weird computer-generated rooms with like a checkered floor and a bunch of gold columns, and then it'd be like a floating head and some lean cups around. It's like this kind of ugly extravagance, like these edits you would make, like a picture of you, and then there's a filter on it, and you're like that, and there's like lean cups around you, and above in letters that look like they're a gold chain, it says like Young Lean. And that stems from like early like 3-6 Mafia graphics and a lot of like honestly Southern rap. But then it's just like white people that get a hold of it. And they, it's like he's really not that talented of a rapper. But what he is like very unapologetically himself and expressive. And more importantly, he made a whole aesthetic that was kind of cool, like the windbreaker and the bucket hat. Like that was in style. Like he, for the time, looked cool. And so there's this weird agreement that everybody has of like, no, like he's cool because he doesn't give a shit. You know what I mean? It's like the first guys, like the first shitty SoundCloud rappers to get like neck and face tattoos were sick because it was like, damn, like this kid that had like a normal suburban life is like really committing to like kind of just being a piece of shit now. Like he's kind of throwing it all away. And so that's something people want to follow because they're like, okay, well, he's not great at music, but there's a lot behind him. Like his attitude is such that it's engaging. But then on the opposite of the end of the spectrum, you have these other kids that make music and like they just want to write really safe music, and they always go to their local park and they like sit on a bench and they're trying to get like a good nature scene. But there's like fucking people playing with their dogs in the background and they're just like going back to school, always worried about being cool. And it's like, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have Young Lean that's like, I'll fuck your mother and her cousin. It's like, so people are like, whoa, that's crazy. But you listen to this kid and like, he's not saying anything crazy. It's like, it's the normalcy of him, the suburbanness of him, and yet his willingness to share it is what's crazy. And he puts it out. He puts out these reels and people just make fun of him. And it doesn't even feel like you're finding new music. Like you just know there's no fans of this, And I feel for them because that is what this podcast is. I'm just the stand-up version of these kids. Every week I speak for an hour and it's not good. And it makes me wonder like, damn, I'm not even interesting enough to like make fun of. You know what I mean? Like people for the most part just are not into it, And sure, I believe and have to believe that this is something I'm growing, but also it's like there are so many people who just have unless they delete it, a pretty much forever phase of their life that is left on the internet. And what that means is like 6 videos that they can tell you took a long time making because they thought it was going to pop off because they believed in the internet. And then it stopped. And I've still had a low enough amount of episodes that when people see my podcast, they're like, this is a bad thing that this young person might realize he should stop doing. But what they don't know about me is I've been going to open mics, hanging around the worst people in the world since I was 17, and many times embarrassing myself, and I have still not quit. So the internet is just one more thing to be embarrassed by and try and get affirmation from, almost begrudgingly. But I mean, I don't know. I do enjoy it, and I don't, I just wonder, it's like, what are these kids' inspiration? You know what I mean? Like, I think they listen to, like this one kid, I think he just listens to the radio, this guy Josh I was talking about. Like, I don't even think he listens, I don't even know if he has a favorite artist. I think he listens to, like, the radio. I think he's a kid that, like, looks at Coldplay and Maroon 5 and is like, those are great musicians, And honestly, once you see how bad he is, it's like, yeah, it is still tough to be Coldplay. Like, you can't be the worst musicians in the world and be Coldplay, But but they're inspired by people whose songs mean nothing. Coldplay's just better at dressing it up, you know? Are they Are We Human or Are We Dancer? But that kind of shit. It's like, that means nothing. Like, it means nothing. But it's always inspiring. And that's, you know, it's either inspiring or it's like, it was hard last year, but we always get, and it's always we, you know what I mean? It's never like personal. It's always like, but we all just keep going. Come together, y'all. You know, like it's this weird thing that just exists. But I feel for them because I am them. I'm a suburban kid with nothing to say who unfortunately has a dream to be in the arts. And, you know, luckily stand-up is something where it's kind of even funny to call it an art to a lot of people. But it is technically an art. But it's an art where you can be like, I'm a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? Like, at least you can make fun of yourself. I feel bad for these musicians because they have to kind of take themselves seriously, you know, if that's the route they're going. Unless you want to go full bore, just I don't give a shit, and then you can be one of the biggest musicians in the world for like a couple years. Like Lil Pump did that. Like all his songs were, you know, I just broke my wrist. I just broke my wrist. Gucci, you know, it's all just the same phrase over and over again to be like, I'm an idiot, I'm a clown, you know. But also, it's fun in rap because you're kind of obviously making fun of yourself sometimes, but the whole bit is that you kind of never break. Like Young Lean would come out with a song called Oreo Milkshake, and he would talk about pissing on your floor, and he would never relent. There was no point where he'd be like, I'm just fucking around. You know what I mean? Like he was like, nah, this is sick. And that's when people, this weird, ironic, but also true love of people comes where you're like, well, he is confident because people respond to confidence. And you kind of can't beat it when somebody is that confident. Like, you can't beat Young Lean. Like, because so many people around the world were like, you're terrible at rapping. And he was like, I'm fucking sick, actually. Me and all my friends are like great fucking rappers. We're like massively talented people. And then the guy that continues to be like, no, you suck. It's like, dude, you can't beat him. You're not going to convince him. Because it's the same thing as like a shitty fan at a football game that's like yelling at a very famous football player, being like, you fucking loser. Like that guy wins because he already is the loser. You know what I mean? It's like, that football player, if he looks at him and he's like, shut the fuck up, it's like, now you've lost because you're arguing with a fucking trash-ass person. Like, you've already lost because you've descended to their level. So when you look at somebody like Young Lean and then you go as far to critique his music, you've already lost because his music is, like, unapologetically stupid. So to then be like, this is dumb, it's like, well, you're almost pointing out the obvious. It's so obvious that it's dumb already that the first thing you say kind of has to be your second thought. You know what I mean? Because if you listen to that and you're like, this is bad, you're like, okay, but like, what is beyond that? Like, it's bad, but why does this video have over 10 million views? It's because he's confident in his badness, which nowadays, in turn, makes you good. It's... People, because everybody's so afraid of being embarrassed because of the internet, people have a really hard time just being genuine about something. So if you're a musician that in and of yourself kind of is a joke, you've circumvented actually trying because there's nothing to be made fun of because you are your own goof. So you're just really like untouchable. But, like, this guy Josh, on the other hand, is, like, he's not making fun of himself. He's, like, serious. Like, he's really... And he's not, like, intense. But he's not being funny. He is. He doesn't know. But he's, you know, it's like he's singing a heartfelt song about being 17. Which, in and of itself, is so funny. But he doesn't know that. Young Lean knows it's funny to write a song with like this kind of beautiful, inspiring sounding beat, like dun 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 dun, like really nice beat, and then say pissing on the floor. Like the juxtaposition, the brashness, the upfrontness, the unapologetic just assholery is so intentional that it makes him untouchable. But this guy Josh is just genuinely trying to make music that's been made before and has kind of always been bad, you know? And it's really hard to do that now. It's almost impossible. Like you can't, like it's hard to be Dave Matthews now. You know what I mean? Like the only people that are really able to be like unapologetically like romantic and like optimistic, like childishly optimistic, are like pop stars. Like if you're like BTS, you know, or if you're Taylor Swift, you know, then you can do that because that's like kind of your thing, you know. Or then if you add confidence to it, you know, if you add like a real like sexual confidence, then you can be like a Rihanna, you know, where you're like, you know, I'm looking for the best man and I deserve that. Then people be like, fuck yeah, I'm with you, you know. But it's hard to be like a white dude doing genuine soft rock now. And I'm not saying that as like, it's fucking hard for us. Like, it's just too funny. It's become such like just a staple of cringy shit to be a white dude with an acoustic guitar singing about a unlived, generally uninteresting life. Because I did some, not digging, but I looked at like a college shirt he was wearing and I realized he most likely lived in an affluent area of Southern California. Like, not LA though, you know? So it's like he's boring suburb and just full shelter. But this kid's interesting because it's like, and this is very common on the internet to like overanalyze somebody. Like this is probably a more normal guy than most people now. Like me starting comedy at 17 and hanging out till places with till like 4 a.m. with drug addicts is not normal. But now my disposition, the kind of like faux confidence and anger and like trying to be cool is so normalized that it is more boring than this kid who's like aggressively just like a glass of milk with bleach in it. Like he's so boring. It's crazy that you start to think he's a psychopath. Because like I was watching the video and he's thinking about being 18. So he's like about to go to college. And he's old enough that like he could have fucked by now. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, a lot of people, I fucked when I was 17, but a lot of people start earlier. But a lot of people, by the time you're 18, people are fucking. People have been fucking, you know? And, you know, even if you're 23, I guess that's a late, you know, you are a late bloomer technically, but like he's around the time where like his want for dick or pussy, I put dick first because I'm woke, but like his want to come should be stopping him from making genuine songs about being 17. That being said, it's probably what driving him, and that's his way of being weird, is that he thinks like this is cool, like we can all chill and, you know, the guys and the girls can sing and the Christian youth group, you know, like it's very Christian, it's very washed. And like his song is, you know, he's at a park. Him and his friends are like hanging out at a park. And obviously they're doing it for the video, but he also watched it and you're like, I feel like this is what you guys do though. Like, I feel like you're a group of 18-year-old boys who are like, what should we do? And it's like, let's go chill on a bench. Where it's like, no, that's like 14. You're 18 now. You have cars. You should have a fake ID. You should be doing things that would kind of scare your parents. So in a few years, you can kind of come down and be more chill. You know what I mean? Like, you should be, what I'm saying is usually when you're 18, the whole thing is you want to be an adult because you sort of are, but you're not. But you are in the sense that like you have options now. Like you're able to drive, you look a little older, you're able to get in places that a 14-year-old can't. So you should be trying to kind of break the rules to enter the adult world. And this kid seems to have no want for that. Like, he still just has this very sheltered 14-year-old kind of optimism of like hanging at the park, fun after dark. It's like, but the fun is just like a bonfire where they make s'mores. You know what I mean? And it's like, and it's, in a lot of ways, it's what he should be doing. It's nice. It's like sweet, Like, it is a sad thing when all of a sudden you're like, fuck s'mores, let's get a bottle. You know what I mean? Like, that is sad because you're losing that innocence. But also, you have to, at a certain point, you have to reject the beautiful life your parents have given you. Like, in many ways, the kid that comes from the rich suburb and then gets a face tattoo is kind of doing what he's supposed to do. He's rejecting the father, and he's rejecting that the things that have been given to him, and he's trying to make a way for himself. But he's doing it wrong. He's an idiot. He's young. He got a fucking face tattoo that he shouldn't have gotten. But the path is the same as the guy going to war, and a lot of people aren't going to like that, obviously, and I don't like it either. But I'm saying it's not the same, but it is from the same place. If it's an effort to get out of that shelter, Because a lot of people are like, well, why do all these suburban kids want to be like gangsters or whatever? And it's like, well, because you want to do the opposite, because you want to leave your nest. So if you're starting at like middle class, even like the top, like you want to get to that crumminess. And that's like what comedy kind of gave me, you know what I mean? Of like a middle class kid from suburbs, had a good life, I mean, there's family trauma, small, but like family broke up, drug addiction, with dad and brother, and having to see people on heroin. Like, it got dark. It got darker than a lot of kids, but at the same time, I was still always safe. You know what I mean? I was still in the San Fernando Valley of California. Like, it was never the mean streets, But that being said, is I liked going to Mike's because I would see true degeneracy. And I would see it, and I saw it with my family, but that was like valley heroin addiction, where you're just like on the couch watching Bad Santa 2. Like, it's a different kind of sadness. That's like a real darkness. This was like a kind of applauded darkness of like, oh, he's the fun guy. And then now the guy that I knew that was big, fat, and loved coke is now, 200 pounds lighter on meth and sleeping outside of my work, literally. But like, I did, and I still do in my growth, kind of need to see that, because if you plunge yourself into some really kind of gross, dark places where open mics in LA happen, you start to understand where you exist in the world. And eventually, as you kind of do that long enough to where you go, I don't really want to be a piece of shit. And then you kind of try and almost get back to the suburbs, but like with your own money and life and career and your own justification for being there. But if you just stay in the suburbs, it's like you kind of don't know why you're there to begin with. And that is, I think, these kids' problem is like, he's singing about life and hardships, but he hasn't really even attempted to understand what any of that means. So then you just have these songs that are meaningless. We're like, it's a spring of 2020. I wish things costed a penny. Like, it just means that you don't have anything to talk about. And I don't have anything to talk about either, but I've at least been around lives that are different from me for about 6 years now, to where I can almost mimic things being, you know what I mean? It's like you can start to piece together a world outside of you. And luckily, when you do comedy, you get to meet people from different walks of life. But because you're doing the same thing, they have a certain amount of respect for you. And, I've been able to make people that have grown up with very different circumstances and me laugh and think I'm funny, garner enough respect to be friends with them, talk to them, and then, learn from that. And in comedy, you get shit on or whatever, you get called on stuff, so you get to, you kind of get hard boiled into realizing like, oh, I really am like a dumb, sheltered white kid. But that's like important. And I know that now, at least more than I did before. So now, like, if I'm speaking out of turn, at least I know I am. And, there's room to grow is what I'm saying. It's like, I'm glad that comedy has given me the chance to learn how much I don't know. And I don't know anything other than that. I really don't know anything. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the one piece of knowledge. It's like, man, I really have like no perspective on life. But if I had never done comedy and I had just sort of gone to college and hung out with other college kids and went after a normal career, I would think that that was the world and that I would base my perspective off of Brandon's perspective. And I'd be like, well, I'm kind of the smart one of the group, and that's like a small town disease almost. You can do that anywhere if you just make a bubble. But, you notice that especially too in comedy, some people literally, they move from small towns. And in small towns, if you want to be a type of guy, sometimes all it takes is like putting on a shirt. You know what I mean? Like if you wear a tie-dye shirt in a town of 3,000 and you sometimes have weed, you are a crazy hippie stoner, and that's it, and that's decided, and you can fucking get pussy off of that or whatever. It can be your whole life. Then you move to LA and you're like, I'm the crazy hippie stoner guy, and everybody's like, oh, all the other crazy hippie stoner guys from other 3,000 people towns moved here as well. So go hang out with them. And then they just hang out in a group and they're like, isn't weed great? And they find a way to never really realize how dumb they are because they never really leave the bubble. They just find it somewhere else, And I try and not do that. I think I try and be wrong. Maybe a little too much. I don't know. It's growth, especially in stand-up, is tough because sometimes you just get off stage and you're like, why did I do that? I was on stage last night, just doing a new joke, and it just didn't do that well. It got like 30% laughs, out of 100. So you can hear the laughs. Most of the room is laughing, but not hard. And it's embarrassing, and I'm just bombing. And by the end, I just got mad, and I was like, this will make the shitty comics in the back feel better. Because I was doing it at the Comedy Store as a door guy. I have this lucky position. I don't think I deserve it, but it's the position at the Comedy Store where you work the door, and they only give it to young comedians, and you get to go up and perform. And we had our open mic last night where we all get to go up, among other sets in the week, but he got to go up. But that's nerve-wracking because there's other comics there that want your job and want what you have, and then, of course, think that you shouldn't have it and kind of hate you for it. I would hate me. I'm 23 and generally unpleasant, and I have a job that people twice my age want. So there's reason to believe that when I go on stage, some people would almost prefer me to bomb. That being said, that's a terrible way to think. Because if I went up and I did really well every single time and I was nice, most people would be happy with that. It takes a real hater to really still be mad at you. But I went up and I got mad. I just ended mean. And I was thinking about something my friend Dan said, whereas that when you're angry, everybody's scared and you're scared. And that's what it was, as I was scared. I was really scared of the audience because they had the power to laugh or not laugh. And what I was saying was a new joke that wasn't funny enough for them to laugh, and so I had nothing, and I was scrambling. And sometimes you can be angry on stage, and if the crowd gets that you're kind of fucking around, then it can go okay. But if you've had a bad set and you haven't garnered their affection or trust more so, and then you get angry, you're just stacking shit on top of shit you've already shit. And it's just all shit top to bottom. And I left, and I was really angry at myself. I was like, why the fuck do I do that? Everybody thinks I'm an asshole. Everybody hates me. I'm such a mean person. I'm such a bad guy. I'm a bad comic. I can't stand being a bad comic, and so I lash out, and that's childish. And that last part's true, but I did have to stop and just go, yeah, you can do the thing where you hate yourself, but that is in the same vein of what you did to the audience. You're just trying to kill yourself now after you try to kill the audience. So I had to tell myself, like, okay, well, let's make some basic rules. If you bomb, don't say really mean things to the audience or your fellow comedians. Because at the end of the day, you've been doing stand-up for 6 years. You're 23. You have nothing in the way of a management or agent. The only thing I really have in stand-up that is tangible is this door guy job, which to 99% of the world, they are unaware of. It's not a job that exists. But to a small percent understands that this is the same job that Bobby Lee and Ari Shaffir and a lot of, famous comics have had. This job is like a graduate school for young comics, and the hope is you come here, you do well, you're able to get management, you're able to get taken on the road by other comics, and it's, supposed to be kind of the last nest before you fly. Like if everything goes to plan, the door guy job should be your last job. But plans change and shit's hard and, whatever, shit happens, But that is still, my hope. So I have to remember that of like, Cooper, you're a nobody. You owe the world your smile and cordialness and respect because the world doesn't really owe you that. And they don't owe it if you're famous. That's a silly way to think. But the point is, it's like nobody's really amped when I get on stage. People that have known me for years and been like, oh, this young comic, I've seen him grow and I think he's fun. They're like, Cooper's up. I hope he does well, and that's what I get. And that's maybe what I deserve at the most. But I don't deserve anything beyond that. And even if I was a successful comic, if I acted that way, I wouldn't be a successful comic for very long. So it's, I put myself in a bad position last night. Luckily, nobody of, this is gross to say, but of industry importance really saw it. So there wasn't anybody there that's like, oh, yeesh, let's put him on a blacklist. That's a mistake I can learn from. It is just one set. But I have to make a lot of mistakes to learn not to do them. And that's kind of how it is when you have anger issues, I wish it wasn't this way, and I guess I don't think it is. But when you were young and cocky and angry, it's important that you lash out so you can see how dumb it is. And when I say it's important to lash out, I don't say I necessarily do it on purpose, but I do have moments where I allow myself to do it. And after I do that, I have to stop and go like, all right, can't do that. I have to get more rudimentary in the way I'm thinking about the way I associate myself. Because right now I'm like 23 and I'm cocky and I think that I can just go up there and be honest and that'll be fine. And the core of that is true, but at the same time, if you have anger issues, sometimes hide the way you feel, because maybe the way you feel is just a moment that you're going to regret later, and you don't need to tell 150 people it into a microphone in Hollywood. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to do that. But I've been very angry lately, and I've had sets where I've lashed out at a lot of times other comics in the audience. And it's just bad, and it's like unfair, unjustified anger. It all comes from this defensive, cocky thing. Because it can be tough at open mics when bombing is one thing. But sometimes at open mics, these people. And they're your friends, but they're still cliquey. And you can feel them judge you. And you just want to be like, you guys aren't fucking famous. You're not great comics. You're all fucking pricks. So I am having a moment right now, and I am wrong. But I also hate you for your, kind of pompous judgment of me. I don't think you deserve that. But that's not any way to live. You just have to let it go. And also, all of that can completely be in my head because at the end of the day, a lot of times people aren't judging you and thinking they're better than you. A lot of times they're just not laughing. And they just don't care. But they start to care when you're like, you're fucking pricks. Because then they're like, what the fuck? He's freaking out right now. I don't know. My line for freaking out is much, much higher than most people, which I think is bad. That's what happens when you have anger issues. It's like, I'll go on stage and I'll like be rude. And then like I had a comic text my girlfriend and be like, yeah, Cooper was really mean at the mic the other day. And it's just because I went up and was like, isn't it funny that nobody who comes here is successful? Which to me, it was just words. I was like, I'm just fucking around. I'm just being a dick, you know? Then people hear that and they're like, yeah, you're being a dick. But the thing is when I was 18, I punched a 65-year-old man in the face at an open mic because he heckled me. So I think wrongly so, in my mind, everything's fine unless I'm punching somebody. And that's not how stand-up works because your words are important. They're the whole thing. So if your words are reckless, then you are being reckless. And I can't walk around and be like, well, I didn't punch him in the face, so it's probably fine. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's literally how crazy people act. That's literally the same as being like, I'll show you crazy. You know what I mean? Like, you can't do that. So I don't know. I'm not polite. And I need to be just polite. But I think being a little wild and a little reckless, I'm not saying being like racist. I'm just talking about just kind of speaking freely on stage is, of course, important. But when people don't respond to it, you can't lash out at them with anger. You have to be wild and reckless like the sherbet at Baskin-Robbins. And if it doesn't work, then still show them love. You can't be a guy that's saying shit that people don't think is funny and then also get mad at him. You just got to be like, okay, you didn't like that. I'll do something else. I'll move on. I'll find another way to work this out. Because, yeah, I mean, otherwise you're just going on stage being a cunt. And it's so funny because I got off stage and I thought about this thing this comic Argus Hamilton told me. He goes up at the Comedy Store almost every night in the main room. He was on late night more than I think anybody else, and he was almost up for the host job. He's been in the game for a while, and getting to be around comics like that is amazing because this is a guy in his 70s or so, and he's seen many eras of comedy, and he's done stand-up for so long. So when he gives you advice, it can be really consolidated, useful advice. And one of the things he told me was comedy is just love with laughs in between. And I need to find it in myself to not be such a cocky cunt to really feel that, because I do feel that, because that's true, stand-up is a cooperative effort between audience and comedian, and it takes a level of understanding and also love and tolerance of their hesitation or whatever for you to find what will make them laugh. And last night I got off stage and I was like, I did not love them. By the end of the set, I really hated them, and I felt really judged by them. And I became cagey, and I started biting the vet because I was a dog with a broken arm. And if I go up there and I tell a bad joke and I break my own arm, all I got to do is just fucking laugh at the dangling limb. You know what I mean? That's all I can do. I can't fucking walk around and get pissed at him. You know what I mean? But, it's tough because it's like stand-up is like, I don't know, it's like being in the internet sometimes almost, because like sometimes I'll post a clip and then a guy will be like, this sucks. But sometimes I do a joke and then I can see a guy's face and I can see that he thinks it sucks. And now he's not just across the screen, he's right in front of me and I'm mad at him. But I'm mad at myself. That's the thing, is a lot of times when you're mad at the audience is you're really angry that you haven't been able to make them happy. And so you get angry at them, still in this weird attempt to make them happy. Because what you want is control. What you want is, what I want. And I shouldn't. But I realized that's where that gross actions come from. That anger comes from a lack of feeling in control. And I want that control. I want to be able to stand up there and say my jokes and to control the room and make them happy. But there's too much aggression in what I'm doing. So then when I can't make them happy, I still want control. But now I'm mad at them, so I'm trying to get it by being mean. But the only way to get control in stand-up is to make them happy, is to make them laugh. And then if you're being mean, it's like, okay, so you're trying to, this is a square peg round hole. Like, you're trying to win this room, but you're not even, you've abandoned, you're doing the opposite of the one thing you're supposed to do, which is make them feel comfortable and happy. You're now yelling at them in the hope that they then agree with you still. And I don't want to admit it, but when I was lashing out on stage, I was hoping that they would be like, yeah, fuck yeah, get mad, and then they would laugh and it would be this, I would turn it, but I didn't. The set was below average, and then I got fucking mad, and then I left and I felt bad about it for a while and still do, but, it was until 3 a.m. that I really thought about it, and I was like, I could hate myself. Or I could just not do that again. I could just go out into the world and on stage and just choose to have a nice time instead of just being mean, And that's all it is. It's just a decision to have a good time. And the audience has made that. They've come out to a show to have a good time. And I think that's the funniest thing, is that's why bombing is so funny, because you're wanting to make a group of people happy and you're doing the opposite. That's so funny that you went up to be like, hey guys, and they're like, no. That's hilarious. And it's even funnier when you went up with that intention, it didn't work, and now you're like, fuck you. That's hilarious. That you wrote jokes. You did something as dumb as write jokes. You, in some ways, arguably wasted your time trying to be funny, and it didn't work, and now you're mad. It's hilarious. It's very funny that people like me even want to do stand-up, because it's like, wouldn't it be people who are generally happy? But I don't think so, because I think people that are generally happy, the thought of trying to go make a room full of people like them, they don't really need that, And, you want to be a cool guy and you want to act like, well, I do it for the laughs. But what do the laughs mean? It means a room of people like you. I want rooms of people to like me. For me to have a career, I need rooms of people to like me. But I'm just too desperate right now. The problems in my stand-up are basic in the sense I'm still learning craft. I'm still getting better at joke writing. I'm still finding a voice. But then there's bigger things where, I feel rushed by the pace of stand-up now, with people blowing up on the internet and feeling like if you're 6 years in and you're not fucking famous, you're already late, which is crazy, because you're not even really good at stand-up until 10 years. You don't really understand it till then. So it's big things like that, as well as just anger. It's really hard to do stand-up when you have anger issues, because sometimes stand-up itself can trigger anger responses, and that will happen on stage. And you start doing the opposite of what you were asked to do and what you said you would do. And, sometimes as long as your intention is still to have a good time, that anger can totally work. There's tons of comics who have made careers out of anger. You just got to be mad at the right people at the right time, and let the crowd know that, it's all just still goofing. But I have a problem where sometimes at open mics and shit, if it's not going well, I'm like, well, what if I just said exactly how I feel? Would that be funny? Because that would shock the audience, and it could be relatable, because it would be a feeling they could understand even. And sometimes you do that, and sometimes it does work. They're like, wow, you really just kind of fucking said it. And that can be kind of a moment, a little break with the audience and kind of let them into what you're doing. But you can also run into issues where that little subtle switch doesn't happen and you are just being mean. And then you get off stage and you're like, why did I think that being mean would work out? You know what I mean? Like, why did I think that would work out? That was dumb. what a dumb idea that was, you know? I didn't think that one through at all. So, I don't know. You got to chill out. I got to chill out. I just got to chill. But I don't know. I don't know how to chill. I mean, it's like it just takes a long time. It takes a long time, and I don't like anger issues because you just walk around and you're like, fuck it, you know? Just fucking shut your fuck. I was mad alone in my room at 3 a.m. the other day. I had I think been on Instagram a couple minutes before and just seen a comic I don't like and was just mad. It just pissed me off that I just thought they were unfunny and that I was sharing a space with them. And I was like, fucking shit. And I got in my room and I was like, why am I so mad? What the fuck is wrong with me? Why am I so pissed off right now? But that is anger issues. It's like, you're like, are you fucking kidding me? And your friend looks at you and he's like, what? That's when you know you have real anger issues. Is people don't tell you to stop. They literally ask why this is happening. They're like, well, that guy cut me off. And they're like, yeah, but you're punching your windshield. You know? And it's like, well, yeah, but. And it's like, there is no but. You're just freaking out. You just have to not fucking freak out, you know? And I don't know. I like to believe that with, you know, patience and time and restraint and understanding and trying to take lessons from my mistakes, that I will be able to take this anger and the things that I consider to be wrong with me and actually mold them into part of an act. Because, you know, I'm always going to have anger. It's just a fact of whether or not I can manage it. But it's in me. You know, you have to accept that you're never going to be a chill guy. That in a lot of ways you have kind of a chronic illness. And yeah, I am 23 and a dude, and, you know, I'm sizzling right now. I'm a fajita hot off the fucking press. The fajita press, you know, I like to mix phrases. But I'm still sizzling. And by the time I'm 30, I'll be, you know, a little bit older of a dog. My balls will be a little smaller, and I'll be a little less angry. But I can already tell there's anger in me. There's just anger issues. So, you know, if I can find a way to, you know, accept that, then, you know, hopefully be half as good as Bill Burr, who can go on stage and talk about anger but not seem like a piece of shit, you know? Because that is what sucks is like, you know, anger issues with unawareness are very unappealing because it's just a guy on stage being like, you know what I fucking hate? And then sometimes people are like, all right, why don't you chill out? But somebody like Bill Burr is so talented at like being like, oh, when I get mad, I'm wrong. Then the audience is like, oh, okay, well, I'll hear about you being angry and I'll laugh at it because I feel comforted by the fact that you know you're wrong and I feel safer now. It's the scariest thing in the world is a guy with anger issues that thinks he is correct. That's what's wrong is because, you know, I don't know if I said this or if, I'm sure somebody said this before, but with anger issues, it's you might be right to be angry. Maybe you did get cut off. Maybe somebody did wrong you, but you're wrong because now you have followed them to their house and you were trying to ram your Honda Civic through their guard gate. That's where you're wrong. You know what I mean? If you kill your neighbor's dog, you're now wrong. Did it shit on your lawn? Yeah. But you've become wrong. And then you're the guy that's like, well, he fucking shit on my lawn. And then nobody's listening to you. That's what's worse is you can't be the anger issue guy that's still trying to explain the point after you've fucked up. You just got to go, yeah, that was fucked up. That was wrong. Because nobody's ever really going to maybe disagree with the premise of the anger. People can understand that. They'd be like, what are you mad about? He did that? Well, that's understandable. But next time, you can't fight him. You know what I mean? That's the problem. It's the action of anger that's the issue. Everybody gets angry. It's people with anger issues that don't know how to deal with it, and then it becomes an issue. That's the issue. The issue is the issue, is the fact that there is an issue. It's not an issue to be quietly angry. It's an issue to punch your windshield and have to call a safe light. You know what I mean? Now you have an issue. Everything was fine. I punched my wall. Now I have an issue and I have to go buy plaster. That's an issue. You found the problem. You can't be confident in it. You know what I mean? I wish I could be. I wish I could just be a dumb guy that just thinks he's right to be mad all the time. But it's just, you can't. It gets tiring. Because it weighs on your brain. When I'm really angry all day, I can feel like my frontal lobe just hurting from being so pissed. From just being furious all day. Not furious, furious. Okay? Furious. The fastest anger possible. Italian engineering anger. I mean, just, just mad. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's not a good way to go through life. And you just feel like such a monster. You know what I mean? You just feel like such a monster, and you look at those you love and you're like, oh, fuck, she saw that. You know what I mean? And it's embarrassing. But what also sucks about anger is everybody thinks you don't see it. And it makes me angry. But, there's some comic, he was talking shit about me to my friends. He didn't know that I was much closer with those people than he was. But he was saying, well, maybe he could be okay if he could break from the chains of his own anger. And this is a guy with very obvious anger issues. But he was saying that. And he was trying to say that I was unaware. And he's right in the sense that if I could break from the chains of my anger and control it, I would have a much better life. He is correct. But what pissed me off was his assumption that I thought that I'm fine. That's what's rough, is when you have anger issues, you seem unaware because you're a guy freaking out. You're like, I'm fucking right. I'm pissed off, So people think that you think you're correct to punch a box of cereal in the market. But people don't know that after you do that, you go home and you cry, And I didn't cry last night, but I got sorrowful, you know what I mean? You immediately feel bad. I mean, and this is probably a result of other things wrong with my head, but anytime I have any kind of outburst, I don't go longer than 5 minutes before I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why the fuck do you act like this? Why would you ever do that? Who taught you to act this way? Why are you doing this? But then it's funny because other people who have their own insecurities and their own want for power then critique you to feel better, where they're like, well, yeah, that guy, he's a fucking piece of shit. He doesn't know shit about himself, And you're like, no, I do. It's just, I can see the mountain. It's just big and I haven't climbed it yet. But yeah, of course, I've looked at the mountain my whole life. It actually, its stature has halted me even starting to climb it because some of this feels insurmountable. So that's what gets me, where people are like, well, he's an idiot. He doesn't get it. I see how fucked up he is, but he doesn't. It's like, no, I do. You're just underestimating mental illness, not realizing that you can be aware of a problem, but still not know how to fix it and be really scared. And anger comes from fear, and that fear grows, and you make your mountain bigger, and you give yourself more to climb, and people with anger issues are very afraid people who are also a lot of times overly thoughtful people. Not that they're smart, but they think a lot. Even if they're dumb, they're still like, you motherfucker. They just ruminate. And so there's so much behind that anger. The outburst is just the show. But you don't see the months and months of writing and rehearsal and performance that goes into it. I mean, and the after party of fucking crying in your pillow, talking about how much you miss her grandma. You know what I mean? Like, that's all part of the anger. It's the sadness is there too. And it feels bad that when you're angry, you're kind of stripped of the perception that you're a hurt person because you hurt people. But hurt people, and people know that. But people forget that when you get so angry. They go, that guy's just an asshole. He's going to leave and he's going to think he was right. He's not. Most of the time, if you see a guy in public and he's having an outburst where he gets really angry, whether or not you want to believe it, because it's not fun and it doesn't it's not rewarding to think this, but chances are that guy is going to go home and probably feel terrible about what he did. It's a small segment of the population. There are guys that are like I'm anger issues, but also like depression and sadness, you know. So there's always the come down of crying. But I think there are some guys that are angry, but also kind of love themselves. So it's a rough mix. And maybe they go home and they don't feel too bad. But for the most part, even the least introspective person has a moment where they go, that was a little much tonight. Huh? Huh? Punching Dan at the Elks Lodge, that was probably a little overboard for me. Huh? Tommy boy, you know? Probably take a step back next time. You know, I don't know. This episode was not funny because it's hard to make anger issues funny. And, you know, maybe I just needed an hour of atonement. And, hey, I think we got some stuff done. Maybe this isn't how I should podcast. Maybe this is an episode I will be embarrassed of because it's been a 23-year-old trying to share his perspective genuinely. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that's embarrassing. But hey, you kind of just do your best every day, huh? Right? Maybe. Who knows? Anyway, I'll see you guys next week, and I love you so much.